You ever have one of those nights where the rain just won't let up? The city feels like it's holding its breath, and somehow out of nowhere you find yourself faced with a choice you know is about to change everything? Yeah, that was me. I was coming off a 12-hour shift at Mercy Hill Medical Center, my scrubs clinging to me, shoes soaked, every muscle in my body aching for a bed and maybe some peace, but life had other plans. The street was all but empty, neon lights bleeding through the fogged-up glass, and the only sounds were thunder, the tap of rain on metal, and the quiet hum of my own tired thoughts as I drove my battered old sedan down the avenue. You know what I mean? Nights where all you want is to disappear, but the world decides you gotta show up. That's when I saw Hema Boy. Couldn't have been more than 10, just sitting on the curb in the pouring rain. So still you might have missed him if you weren't looking. His clothes were soaked through, way too big, shoes worn to nothing, hair stuck to his forehead like he'd run through a hurricane. And the look on his face, man, it was the kind of fear that settles deep in your bones. I pulled over without thinking, grabbed my hospital badge, just in case, and stepped out into the downpour. He flinched as I knelt beside him, eyes wide, silent. "You okay, kid?" I asked, voice low, as if any sudden move might break him. He just shook his head. I promised him he was safe, showed him my badge, held out my hand. Minutes ticked by, rain running down both our faces, before he finally stood up and let me guide him to my car. Inside, the heat blasted, and I wrapped him in my spare, hoodie so big on him, it looked like armor. He curled up, didn't speak, but at least the shaking eased up. "Amaya," I told him, voice soft. "You don't have to tell me your name, but you can have a shower, something to eat, and a place to sleep, just for tonight." No answer, but he came along. My house isn't much white paint peeling. One creaky step, smells like lavender and detergent, but it's home. I gave him dry clothes, pointed to the bathroom, and he disappeared down the hall, fingers clinging to the fabric like it meant everything. I leaned on the armrest, questions swirling in my head. Should I call the cops? What if his family was looking? But some part of me knew this was about more than following the rules. This was about being human. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup, something warm and simple. He stared at the bowl like it was a mirage, then took a bite and nearly cried. Didn't say a word until the dishes were in the sink, the TV mumbling low in the background. Finally, a whisper, "My name's Elliot." He wouldn't look at me, just fidgeted with the blanket. "Thank you for not leaving me. That nearly undid me." "You don't have to thank me, kid. I couldn't just drive by." He told me his dad worked at a hospital, showed me a crumpled magazine clipping of Mercy Hill, the one I just left. "His name's Charles. Charles Whitman. I think something happened. He hasn't come home." I told him I'd take him with me in the morning, that we'd figure it out together. That night, after he'd fallen asleep, I stood at the window, rain still beating on the glass. I kept hearing that name. Charles Whitman felt like I should know it, but the memory stayed just out of reach. More than that, I kept thinking about what folks at the hospital would say about a black nurse bringing in a white boy no one recognized, about assumptions and rules, and all the ways folks try to keep you in your place. But looking at Elliot, asleep and peaceful for the first time in God knows how long, I knew I'd walk into that storm anyway. Because sometimes doing the right thing means standing in the fire. Next morning, sky still gray, I put on my cleanest scrubs and walked into Mercy Hill with Elliot at my side, his backpack hugged to his chest. The second we hit the fluorescent lights, I felt the air shift, conversations drop, eyes dart from him to me, whispers already starting. "Is that your nephew?" a nurse asked, her smile tight as a wire. "Nope, he's with me today. Just for a bit." She frowned. "We're not supposed to have guests on shift." "He won't be in the way," I said, keeping my tone level. "I'm helping him find his father." The looks didn't stop. One orderly muttered, "This ain't a daycare." Another asked if I just pulled him off the street. Elliot shrank beside me, and my jaw clenched, but I kept walking. I asked around, "Anyone know a Charles Whitman?" Blank stares, some annoyance. Then, as if I'd summoned her, Helen, the head nurse. All clipped words and quick judgments appeared. "Maya, what is this?" she snapped. "He's looking for his father." I thought someone might recognize the name. "So you bring a chilled, stranger into a sterile environment?" "We have rules, Maya." "You think this makes you a hero?" "No, it makes you reckless." The staff circled, waiting for me to break. "He's not causing harm," I said, voice ice cold. "He's a human being. He deserves to be safe. He deserves to be in protective custody." Helen spat back. "And you deserve disciplinary action. Security escort the boy out." I stepped between them. "Don't touch him." Helen glared. "You may be popular, but you're not above the rules." Elliot, silent this whole time, whispered, "I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't mean to make trouble." My heart cracked. "You did nothing wrong, Elliot. But they're mad. They're wrong. You're just a boy looking for his dad. That's not a crime." Security started moving closer, tension thick as the storm from last night. And then right when it felt like everything might explode, a voice rang out, sharp and desperate, slicing through the chaos. "Elliot," the man called, and everything in that corridor froze. Staff parted as Charles Whitman himself, pale, unshaven, looking like he hadn't slept in days, rushed in. Elliot ran, arms outstretched, crashing into his father's embrace, both of them shaking with relief and something deeper. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Charles looked up at me. "You found him," he said quietly. "You brought him here." I nodded, too choked up to speak. Helen tried to, but this boy appeared without clearance, but Charles cut her off. "I'm Charles Whitman, CEO of this hospital. You could have heard a pin drop. She saved my son," he said, voice strong now. "She did what none of you did. And you," he looked at Helen, "you're dismissed." Effective immediately. Her protest died in her throat. One by one, staff looked away, shame crawling up their necks. Charles turned back to me. "Your kindness saved my son. I don't care about policies used to justify cruelty." I could barely look at him. "I didn't know who he was," I said. "I just couldn't leave him." "That's why it matters," he replied. "You helped when you thought he was no one." Behind us, something changed. One of the interns spoke up. "She's the reason I applied here. She helped my mom during chemo." Another nurse nodded. "She stayed late for my patient last week." Quiet apologies started coming my way. For once, I felt seen, not just tolerated. Later, Elliot asked, "Can I still stay with you sometimes?" I smiled, tears finally falling. "Anytime, kid." In that moment, the storm was over and the world felt new. Days passed. My badge now read head nurse still felt strange, but I was growing into it. Charles called me into his office. Elliot sketching quietly by the window. "I've been thinking," Charles said. "Kids like Elliot, they fall through the cracks. I want to start a foundation here at the hospital to help them. I want you to run it with me." It took my breath away. "Let's do it," I said. And we did. The foundation took off. Charles's name opened doors, but it was my story off stopping for a child. No one else saw that. Open hearts. Staff volunteered, apologies flowed, and the walls that had once kept compassion out started to crumble. On launch night, Elliot's drawing hung in the lobby, a simple picture of us, a hospital, a superhero in teal scrubs. I told the crowd, I didn't do anything heroic. I saw a child in pain, and I stopped. That shouldn't make me special. That should make me human. That's the lesson, right? The next time you see someone in need, don't look away. You never know, maybe you'll be the reason a lost child finds home. Maybe you'll be the spark for something better. So, tell me, where do you stand? Is following the rules more important than doing what's right? Drop your thoughts below. Let's talk about what real justice and real community mean. And hey, if this story hit home, hit like, subscribe, and keep the conversation going. Because sometimes all it takes is one choice on one rainy night to change everything.